This week's life hack is going to be brought to you by Dan, and throughout this series we have been looking at life hacks that the Bible and Jesus teach us. They are ways to improve our lives. I really hope you get loads from this, whether you're not a Christian or whether you are someone who calls yourself a Christian. There is loads in this. Enjoy what Dan has got to say today.
Hi there, my name's Dan, and the life hack that I'm going to talk to you about today is a life hack of patience. It may be one of the lesser popular life hacks, but still a really important one. When I was about 5 years old, I remember distinctly Christmas in my household, and I remember it because it seemed like in that year, maybe it was like the first year I really understood the power of Christmas, but it seemed like that year that the present pile under the tree was bigger than any of the years before. And my present pile in particular seemed lovely. And so what we used to do a couple of days before Christmas is separate our presents into piles. My sister's pile, my dad's pile, my mum's pile. So we knew when it came to Christmas Day whose pile was who. And that year was just a bumper crop. And I remember saying 2 days before Christmas, Mum, let me just open one of these presents. And she's like, you can't do that. You know that these are meant for Christmas. It came to Christmas Eve. I said, Dad, please just let me open one small one of these presents. I really want to open it. Dad was like, you can't do that, son. You've got to wait until Christmas. But it came to the night of Christmas Eve and my excitement got the better of me, and I crept downstairs and without my parents knowing, I opened just one of my presents, followed by another one of my presents, followed by most of my presents. I thought, I'll be fair, I'll leave two behind. And so I did, and I tried to like rewrap them again so it looked like it wasn't obvious, but I did a rubbish job of it. And I went back upstairs to bed. And it got to Christmas Day, and when my parents found out, they were obviously disappointed in me. But funnily enough, the most disappointed person in that room on Christmas Day was me. Because whilst my parents and sister enjoyed opening all of their presents, I had only a measly two to enjoy opening with them. Patience, they say, is a virtue, and I never really understood what that means growing up, but what I do know is certainly for young people today and us, we live in a culture that does not really do patience. When I was growing up, you got dial-up internet that started at 6 o'clock every evening, and it took about 20 minutes to get ready before you could surf like MSN Messenger, because Facebook wasn't even a thing back then. I remember that you didn't have Netflix, you'd have to go to the video shop, to like a Blockbusters to get a DVD or VHS. We live in a culture that does not do patience. If you want something, you can get it now. But I want to tell you two really quick Bible stories that talk to us about the importance of waiting for the perfect moment and practicing the gift and the fruit of patience. The first Bible story comes from the Old Testament, and it's about two twin brothers called Jacob and Esau. Esau was the brother that was born just first. They were born at just about the same time, but Esau came out first. Esau, by the way, his name in Hebrew means hairy, so there you go. But they were twin brothers, and they had their own characteristics. Esau was the hunter type. Jacob was, I guess, more of the like clever one of the two. Esau would go out all day hunting, and as a result of that, his dad preferred him the best. Jacob, maybe because he was a little bit more studious, was his mother's favorite. And as the oldest of the two brothers, Esau had what was called the father's blessing. That meant that one day when he kind of came of age, he would have a moment with his father where his father would ask for God's blessing on him. So the blessing was like a rite of passage moment. Esau was going to become head of the household, and this was a moment where the promises that were put on his life were going to be realized. But there's a story where Esau is out hunting and he meets his brother Jacob, and you'll find this in Genesis chapter 25. Essentially, here's the story. He's out hunting as Esau, and he's really hungry, and Jacob is making a stew. So I'm going to pick it up from verse 29. One day, while Jacob was cooking some bean soup, Esau came in from the hunting, and he was really hungry. He said to Jacob, I am starving, give me some of that red stuff. That is literally what the Bible says, red stuff. Kind of been a nice looking stew, I would have thought. And Jacob answered, I will give it to you if you give me your right as the firstborn son. That was what I've just been talking about around that kind of inheritance moment. Esau said, all right then, I'm about to die. What good will a right do me? So Jacob answered, first make me a vow that you will give me your rights. And so Esau gave him his rights. But Esau's really hungry, and he's so hungry that that inheritance that has been put on his life, that promise that was going to be fulfilled, he didn't care about that because he was hungry. And he says to Jacob, I'm so hungry, I think I'm going to die. And the reality is he wasn't. But that's the problem so often when it comes to patience. That we want something so much and that's all we can think about. And it may not be food, it might be that we're desperate for a relationship maybe, or we're desperate for like satisfaction, or we're desperate for entertainment. And sometimes we're so consumed by that that we forget and we miss that there is a greater promise put over our lives. That's what this story teaches us, that Esau misses out that future gain, that future promise, because he is immediately needing something so much. That's why patience can be so vital. So we looked in the first video about the story of Jacob and Esau and how it was Esau's desperation for immediate satisfaction that actually cost him a future inheritance. I want to pull out another Bible story now from the New Testament that looks at the example of Jesus as a great example of one who was prepared to wait, who was prepared to resist, who was prepared to be patient. It comes from Luke chapter 4, and you may have heard it's the story of Jesus being tempted in the desert. And Jesus goes to the desert. Here we go. We're going to go from chapter 4, verse 1. Jesus returned from the Jordan full of the Holy Spirit and was led by the Spirit into the desert, where he was tempted by the devil for 40 days. In all that time, he ate nothing, so that he was hungry when it was over. And the devil said to him, "If you are God's son, order this stone to turn into bread." But Jesus answered, "The scripture says human beings cannot live on bread alone." And the story goes on to two other ways in which the devil tempted Jesus and Jesus resisted. But I like this story because it's got similarities to the story we've just looked at before of Jacob and Esau. In this situation, Jesus hadn't eaten for 40 days. And so unlike Esau, he probably was really, really hungry. And in reality, probably was on the verge of death. And in a bit of a similar way to the story before, the devil makes him a promise. He says, "Look, you turn this stone into bread and I promise you won't be hungry anymore." But Jesus recognized that there was a greater future for him than that immediate moment. Unlike Esau that was prepared to give away that future promise for what was immediately going to be his now, Jesus was prepared to wait and be patient. He knew that if he gave into the devil, he would have been essentially guilty of sin. God's only son, he would have been guilty of sin, of giving into the devil. But rather, he recognized that if he depended on God, that was going to be greater for him. So he resisted. He stayed away. And I love that picture of Jesus. I love that story. I love that he teaches us patience. And the reality is there may well be things that in your life growing up as a young person are lies that you hear about things that you really need now. I remember for me growing up as a young person, that was when I was like 15, 16, to get a girlfriend. All of my mates had girlfriends and there was like this pressure put on me to go out with someone. And I remember I kind of did that a little bit, but it was really wrong for me because I wasn't actually going into a relationship because I really wanted one in a sense. It was because I was feeling pressured into doing it. And so I made mistakes and I hurt people and I got hurt by people. Our plans in our timing can sometimes lead to our shame, but God's plan in God's timing always leads to God's blessing. And patience is an amazing but really hard life hack to resist the things that are being pushed on us now. But we're called to do that. And the Bible calls us to do that, not just to spoil our fun or to say, no, wait till later till you're a little bit older. It's to recognize that God has a purpose and God has a plan on our lives, which is even greater than some of the things that we can sell ourselves short for now. Patience in the Bible, in the book of Galatians, is talked about as being like a fruit. And I love that picture of it because it suggests that patience isn't something that we just kind of do in our own willpower. We hold on really tight. We just say, I'm going to try and be more patient. I'm going to resist some of these things that my mates are doing. It's a fruit. And fruits are grown by cultivating them, by spending time, by watering them, by growing them. And patience is something that, like a fruit, is grown by time spent with God. And I know in my life I've made mistakes because I've rushed into things that has meant that I've missed out on what God has for me. But I found that growing up, the times that I've spent with God have increased my capacity to be patient, to resist, to wait for a better promise than that which is put before me now. So the life hacker today is patience. And it's not always fun and it's not always easy. But if you are patient and you obey God's plan and God's timing, I promise you what you'll get is greater than what you could sell yourself short for.